So thanks for being here. The idea here was to spend a little time talking about jazz clubs and jazz venues that have been vital, absolutely essential in the development of the music that we love, going way back. But we don't always think of them as being the sort of workshops and laboratories that they historically have been. So what you're going to hear most of today is very forward-facing music. Music that's been crafted and rehearsed, hopefully, and presented to you as a finished product, or as finished as jazz gets, keeping in mind that lots of improvisation takes place. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what happens sort of behind the scenes, where in clubs and in concert venues, in regular program series, musicians get to not only develop what they're doing, if they have something regular going on, or in many cases, simply through jam sessions or regular associations at places that allow for an open mic session, start to build the relationships and get a chance to experiment with ideas that they can then hone and perfect into what we'll later hear on record or at a big concert hall. I mean, this has been going on forever. The idea of the jazz clubs as a laboratory, as well as a place of simply developing concepts that have already been formed. So to do that, I asked Mike Allemana, professor and doctor at the University of Chicago, who certainly has plenty of experience in that realm itself, having worked with Von Freeman at the new apartment forever, and building so much of what you know about music and how you play now. And also as a historian, especially the Chicago jazz scene and the South Side jazz scene in which Von Freeman came up. That's the subject of his dissertation, which I understand is online and can be read by anyone. Mm-hmm. And then Chris Anderson, who is just an entrepreneur now. He runs the Lost Sessions, the Chicago Album Art Sessions, at the Fulton Street, right, the Fulton Street studios, and regular performance series that he kept going beautifully throughout the pandemic with online remote sessions that musicians came in to play and everybody else could watch at home, and which has given a different purpose to the kind of thing we're talking about, especially through the album art series, where musicians come in and pick an album and then play all the music from that album in their own interpretation. That's something that most musicians aren't thinking of doing on a regular set just for the hell of it. Chris has set up a matrix, a template for that to happen on a regular basis. And John Foster, who you heard introduced a moment ago, and is going to be with us for just a little bit, can represent the younger musicians who have hopefully experienced what we're talking about, although things have changed a lot from the time that we all read about, from Minton's Playhouse in Harlem, where the musicians used to go after their swing band concerts and somehow birthed bebop through their sessions there. That's kind of the model, the highest bar for the kind of thing we're talking about. But it's happened all through the history of jazz. And I'm curious, John, how much do you think it's still happening now, from your own experience? What have you gotten to do and learn, in addition to the Jazz Links program, which certainly fits into this general category, but through your own playing in town, going to sessions, getting to know people and work out concepts with them?
So I think exactly what you said. It is still going on, and especially at Chris's spot at Fulton Street. Every time I look up, there's a new musician that I've never ever heard of that's being spotlighted, and then they're actually trying to explore some type of craft that they're trying to get into. If they're trying to take Duke Ellington's music and flip it over and make it into something different, or they're taking a whole album and they're reinterpreting it into their own way. It's been great. When I was growing up, the only spot, well, multiple spots. We had multiple spots that we went to. I used to go to Miss Ellis, my music teacher, elementary school music teacher, used to take us all as kids to...
It's Diane Ellis.
Diane Ellis, yeah. Miss Ellis brought up, she used to teach at Dixon Elementary School on the south side of Chicago. She used to take us to see Von at the apartment lounge.
You came to the apartment lounge?
Multiple times.
Yeah. Oh man, I mean, were you a kid when you
When
came
I was
in?
a kid,
Oh yeah.
But here's
That's
what's
awesome.
crazy, because like I remember Miss Ellis used to go above and beyond. She still would go above and beyond for all of her kids. Because technically Kevin King is like the last. I call him the last of the Mohicans, because he's the last of the generation that came out of Miss Ellis. But she would take us there. She would put us all at South Shore Youth Jazz Ensemble with Mr. Carter.
Yeah.
And Mr. Carter actually is funny, because I was in elementary school, which was weird because like Miss Ellis literally dropped me off. And after going through so many years at South Shore Youth Jazz Ensemble, when I first started, because I was kind of big, Mr. Carter thought I was in high school the whole time. So he just kept treating me like a high school student. So that's why I think when I was going to the apartment lounge, everybody thought I was like an actual like either like a high school, like college student, because my father would take me. Because I think I went like I know off the top of my hand I can remember at least like 12 days that I was there, and then it's more than that. But I remember my father used to take me regularly because. We had family that lived around the corner from there, so I would come, and I just remember specifically every single time he would stop after he had played. He'd be like, "Get the singers," and everything, and they'd come up, and that'd set the tone for everybody else. And then that's when I started seeing Isaiah and Kendall Moore, and then because I started going, I started taking some of my friends to go too. So yeah, it was a bunch of people up in there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was there every week, so I was just trying to remember what was happening, because that was a while ago.
Because I remember it was very interesting when we first went in there, and Miss Ellis would tell us the story. She was like, because I was like, man, Mr. Freeman doesn't use a piano player. He uses a guitar, and she was like, yeah. Ask him about it. And I was just like, oh, okay, cool. But it was always nice because, like, after he would play, you would be able to go back. I couldn't sit at the bar, but I'd stand next to him at the bar, and he'd tell me all the different things and everything.
So that's another aspect of what we're talking about, where you get to hang out with elder statesmen musicians in the right setting and just learn from talking to them.
Yeah.
But what about in terms of you actually finding a place where on a regular basis you could meet up with some of the same musicians, either in someone else's band or one that you were leading, and over the course of that time, through that familiarity, start to build up and hone some of the ideas?
So that was through the jam sessions at the Velvet, because they were on Sundays and quite regularly. And shout out
Velvet Lounge, for anybody who may not know, the place that Fred Anderson owned for, 40 years?
Yeah. And I started going when it was at the new Velvet right there on 22nd, around the corner from where the old Velvet was. But shout out to Christopher McBride, who will be playing here today. He used to actually pick me, and you'll see her running around. But Zakia Falai actually played trombone back then. We used to always play. So his whole thing was like, he was in the band, Isaiah was leading the band, Isaiah Spencer was actually leading the jam sessions on Sundays because Fred had put him in that spot. And Chris was playing saxophone, and it was Kevin Neighbors and Zaid on trumpet.
Oh, yeah, Zaid.
And they used to play every week and every Sunday, and I remember it was just like, man, I need to go every Sunday. We need to go. But it was one caveat. My parents wouldn't let me. So shout out to Chris, because Chris actually would pick us up from home and literally take us. So shout out, because like everything that he did, everything that all of like my elders and my mentors and everything did for us, I'm doing now for the next generation of musicians. Like if they can't get a ride home, I make sure that they get a ride home, or if they want to go, I try to make it accessible for them to get there. But he would pick us up, and then I would rehearse, and then after seeing them play so many songs, I'd be like, man, I kind of want to do something like that. So then we had all these different things through the Institute where we had rehearsals and everything. So then that gave us more of a voice, because we were seeing this stuff happening at the Velvet, and gave me more of experimentalization of different components and different configurations of bands that I can put together, which ultimately led into what now is my big band called the Foster Meets Brooks Big Band. And one of my dreams was to bring it back to the Velvet Lounge and play so that Fred can see. But unfortunately, I was just telling Neil this, Fred that was the same year that Fred got sick, so he wasn't able to see it. But he was there when I booked it, and he was like, "I'm looking forward to it," because his whole thing was like, we used to always bond about it because he played tenor, I played tenor, and my biggest influence was Gene Ammons, like from the start. Miss Ellis had me on Gene Ammons and Sonny Stitt from like literally like the go, and then it's kind of weird because like before she put me on it, my father was a big Stanley Turrentine and Gene Ammons, and every Sunday it was Gene Ammons playing through the house when we had to clean up. So for her to sit there and be not only Sonny Stitt's goddaughter, but to also be feeding us the same information, it was just like, let's continue the tradition on.
Okay, so let me now ask Mike, because Mike, you're a generation older than John. Yeah. You're of a generation that still came along after the halcyon days of guys working in big bands, learning how the ropes go, playing in clubs. But you did have that regular job every Thursday, right? Tuesday. Every Tuesday at the apartment lounge, and so you have that kind of experience. You kind of bridge the gap between the stories, the myths that we hear, and what actually happened. I mean, looking at yourself as a player before that long residency, which was how many years?
I did 15 years of Von Freeman every Tuesday.
So looking at yourself before that and then towards the end, what did that do for you?
Well, it was, what John experienced was kind of the everyday when we were coming up. Because if you think about it, when I met Von, he was still in his 60s, right? So a lot of the cats, when you were there with Von, he was in his 80s already, probably mid-80s by that time, early 80s. And so, I'm just a young cat. I mean, it was basically what happened with me is I was doing the kind of thing that most young players, they did a jazz program, right? You do a jazz program. And back in the late 80s, early 90s, the jazz programs were not as developed as they are now. But Fareed Haq came in, and he's like, probably the first professor at NIU who actually was really connected in the scene. And he's like, you got to meet Von Freeman. I was like, okay, let's go check this out. And all of a sudden, you like, oh wait, I got there and I couldn't believe just like the energy around the music, not just from Von and his band, but from the guests that were coming in to sit in, the young players. One night I was there, Clifford Jordan was there, Yeah, it was like a year or two before he died. One night it was Clifford Jordan, but when I was there, Roy Hargrove came all the time. Roy Haynes always hung out late. In fact, I was in my late 20s when I was regularly working with Von, and Roy Haynes at that time was in his 70s, and he would go to Harold's across the street and get a big 4-piece of fried chicken and drink at least 3 cognacs at 2 o'clock in the morning. And if I did that today, I would be in the cardiologist's office. It just would not work. So anyway, you got to see the thing that I think that I get out of what John is saying, and what reminds me of what through your question is the everyday thing, right? It's like you go there, and so I'm like, wow, this is like just everybody being, they're going out for a night in the club. And musicians are there, and it's just what you do. And Von made you feel that way, like this is what you do, but he encouraged you like crazy. So when he would meet young players like John or myself when I was in my early 20s, still in college, he'd be like, just keep practicing, get all your keys down, learn the tunes and all the keys, and learn all the tunes, and learn to play in. And when you can play in, then you can play out. He gave you these little nuggets of wisdom, right? But one of the things that I explored in my dissertation is that it was the way Von taught was not explicit. It was, I want you to figure it out for yourself. So I'm going to show you, and I'm going to give you little hints, and a lot of times it's going to be in an abstraction. Like one night when I was in the band, Von played this solo on. You generally started the night with the standard "Will You Still Be Mine," And Vaughn always took these, like, I swear, I recorded a lot of our gigs, and I swear each tune is 30 minutes long.
It literally is.
Yeah.
It really was. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was, and he felt that there's a great line in his. You can all access the interview that he did with Steve Coleman for the Smithsonian, and he says in there, oh, these producers, they want to come in, they want me to record it, and they want me to record a song that's 5 minutes long. He's like, shit, that's what I need just to get started. So he liked to stretch and really express, and he always said, you keep playing and playing, you'll get to the things you don't know, and you'll find, a more spiritual end of the music. So
and that can only happen in the loose setting of a club. That's
exactly
the kind of thing we're talking about.
Well, I can tell you right now, and it's not the club, it's the type of club, or you have to put some sort of like qualifier there, because as much as Vaughn loved playing the Jazz Showcase in Green Mill, I never saw this at the New Apartment Lounge. He never looked at his watch. He was always keeping, he still played, but he was concerned about timing and everything. But at the Apartment Lounge, he was loose, right? And that was something he had done forever, because there was Betty Lou's in the early days, right? And then there was the Enterprise, and then there was the El Matador, and then Enterprise closed, and if I understand correctly, Lady Jean Payne, Sonny Payne's daughter, helped him get into the Apartment Lounge. And he kept the Tuesday nights going. Anyway, you would go in, and so he was playing this solo, right? Will You Still Be Mine? It's a crazy solo. And I asked him. He would never tell you anything. And he said, all right, Mike, I love you. This is what we're going to do. So he grabs a bottle cap of a cranberry juice drink or something. He puts it on the bar. And he says, now imagine this is the tonic, and there's a rainbow around the tonic. I play in the rainbow. He says, but you can't be in the rainbow too long, because then it's like chaos. You always got to get back to the center. So I use that as a model to think about different ways. And he didn't give me any explicit things, like you need to play these notes. So you go in a jazz program. It drives me nuts, because I try to change things in my own way in the jazz programs I teach it. Is the kids are like, what tune are we playing? What key is it? It's like, who cares? Just start. You'll hear it, right? But they get so lost in the music, and so in their sheet music, right? And so Vaughn's thing was really about you trying to figure out it yourself, so that he didn't push his interpretation on you, and you were able to cultivate your own. But that takes work.
And that's something that would have been unlikely to happen just at a one-off gig, where you played with him and then said, good night, see you in a couple of months.
Every week. A great person to talk to is Greg Ward, because Greg was coming up from Peoria at 15 years old. He was still in high school. And he would come up, he'd meet with Maurice Brown and Corey Wilkes, I think. And this is all in my dissertation, and he talks about it. And and Vaughn would push him. But the thing is, he had a mentor who's one of the great sculptors. What's his name? Down in Peoria.
Greg Ward?
Greg Ward, yeah. What?
Mary Jo?
No, Jackson. Geez, I feel terrible, because he's always contacting.
It's in the dissertation. You can look it up.
Yeah. Anyway, the point is that he got a mentor who was a guitarist. He said, "Oh, you got to go up and hear Vaughn. He's got a great band, and he'll teach you stuff." And then Greg went up to Vaughn and said, "Hey, could I get a lesson?" And he said, "No, baby. No, I don't do that."
All right, well, I want to bring Chris Anderson in here, because we've been talking about things that musicians experience as musicians.
Yeah.
In these settings. But Chris, you've set up something completely different. You don't have a nightclub. Well, your own nightclub. I know you're booking artists at different clubs. But it's not like there's one place where people can go every night to be assured of this kind of event. Instead, though, what you've done at the Fulton Street Art Collective has been to set up expectations among the audience for something that will be specific, bespoke to that concert. It's not something they're taking on the road, or a project usually that they're using all over the place. I know that you book a lot of bands like that, and that's great, but I'm talking specifically about the Record Art Collective thing. How do you think that has had some kind of an impact, a different kind of impact in a different era, in helping musicians develop and hone what they're doing?
Well, it kind of started out almost as a lark. I mean, I was managing the Green Mill for 12 years, and then I got asked by Joel and Asa, who created the Fulton Street Collective to come in and kind of add some programming. And the idea of doing it in an art gallery was intriguing to me, and what I wanted to try to do was create an environment where, as an audience member, you're walking into, you know what you're walking into. It's like taking a 60-minute or a 90-minute class in that specific album. And because we are in an art gallery, we always have a visual artist painting and sketching the band as they perform, and then they can sell their work afterwards. So you fuse the live art in with the live music. And it wasn't until, that started in 2013, it wasn't until Dave Rempus did Action, where he really engaged with the audience. It just wasn't performing the record, just wasn't playing the notes, but really talked about the record. And at first I was like, what are you doing? Will you play the music? And then I went to the side of the stage and watched him and then watched the audience, and everybody was riveted. And that's where the concept kept growing. Like, yes, there's the live art, yes, there's the live music, there's the performing the album, but also there's the educational element. And he talked about what was going on in New York at the time and talked about what was going on in his career. And then that's kind of, continued on. So every time we have a JRAC show, the band leader really does their research and is prepared to talk about the artist and the record himself.
So how do you think that has it had any impact on the musicians themselves? I mean, you deal with musicians who are not just up and coming, for the most part. Some of them are, but a lot of them are established. They come in and they're going to prepare to present this record. Do you think that helps them push their own self-development, education?
I think it broadens their horizons, and it's not me asking them to do it. It's they come to me, and I've had some really far out stuff like, I don't even know this record, and then I'll listen to it and like, yeah, let's give it a shot. And so some of it, is there are some guys that that do the Coltrane's and the Miles Davises and the Clifford Jordans and the ones that are more universally known. But then it was I think years ago, Alejandro Orzagaste did Bar Wars from Willis Jackson. Is that right?
Oh, right, the one he did with Vaughn.
Yeah, and I was riveted. I was blown away. I thought it was fantastic, and so as a curator, it broadened my horizons as well. I found it just fascinating and started exploring that record and that artist as well.
That's not the one he did with Vaughn?
No, that's with Charles Earlin, Pat Martino, and Idris Muhammad.
Oh, okay, I'm thinking of, okay.
Yeah, you're thinking of the one that's live in Amsterdam.
Right, which was also a lot of fun.
Amazing record, yeah.
What about going on around town? We've talked about a couple of places, but in general, where do you see in town the kind of thing that we're looking for, that I'm perhaps memorializing from the past, where people can go and some new music may arise from it, simply because some like-minded people are showing up there? Is there a place like that now in Chicago?
I think that, well, first of all, I'm impressed and shocked at how many venues have popped up since the pandemic. And that is, for anybody pursuing that, you are really, really, really throwing the dice. And it's been interesting to see, because I started noticing it at Greenville, where you have these million-dollar companies whose sole purpose is to keep you at home on your couch ordering stuff from them. So if tonight I could go home tonight, order a steak dinner, a bottle of wine, and watch a jazz performance without leaving my couch. So for you all to go out to see a ballet, or go see some live jazz, or go see a theater play, that does not serve, that's not in Amazon's business model, nor is it Grubhub or Netflix. So I started noticing a decline of attendance, and people and then you throw a pandemic on top of that, whoa, and you got problems. And so I'm impressed with the scene that, you have the Garcias and the Dorians and the Claras, Constellation, the brain, on and on. Keep hammering these programming down, and there's got to be something that's working, because they're still open. So there still is a demand, and there still are musicians out there that want to play, and there still are an audience that wants to see live music, to see live jazz and feel it. So I don't know if that answers your question. I think going a little bit further, just the camaraderie and the community that it creates amongst musicians. I tell musicians all the time, go to a jam session. If you're new in town, go to a jam session. You will learn the ropes, you will learn the players, and you will familiarize yourself with the entire scene. And that was I can't tell you how many relationships I saw came out of the late night jam session on Friday nights at Green Mill. And just tons and tons of cats coming in and out, and years later, they're playing in the same crews together. So, I think that the jam session as a club owner, is not a big moneymaker, but it sure is important to the scene.
Yeah, and I think it always has been, and I mean, that's the history we're talking about here. I had hoped to include Wayne Siegel from the Jazz Showcase. He's traveling, won't be back till the end of the month, but the Jazz Showcase is celebrating its 80th year since its founding. It's not exactly its anniversary because it hasn't been consistently running all the time, but it was founded in 1947. And I believe that while they don't do that much of that now, I think that in the old days, Joe was open to those kinds of sessions, maybe after something that had been scheduled. I think that when he started presenting things at Roosevelt University, when he was a student there, I think he would bring in names. I mean, didn't he bring in Charlie Parker there? I seem to remember. And but then he would also, I think, be open to allowing these kinds of things to develop spontaneously, if only because he knew that that's how his favorite music, bebop, had taken shape in the first place. Does everybody know the story of bebop and Minton's Playhouse in Harlem? Does anybody want that explained? You can raise your hand. Nobody will think you're dumb. Okay, that's fine. We're moving on. What about here in the 70s and 80s? That would be the time when I think all of us are starting to get interested in the music. Maybe 80s and 90s would be better. Do you remember places that you would hear about? Maybe you were too young to go, but that you would think about going, where some of these things could develop?
Well, I just went, so it didn't even though before I was 21, but sometimes it wouldn't let you in. But I think that one of the things that we experienced when you were coming up in the 80s and 90s is just a closer connection to the to the people who were there, right? So, I could hang out with Jody Christian, I could hang out with Irma Thompson, and there were other people. See, you also had a community of like elders who were not necessarily known players, but good players and really good players. Like one who comes to mind is Teddy Thomas. Teddy was a drummer, or he's still alive actually, he's 96, but he's a drummer, he's a drummer singer. And he and Andrew Hill grew up together, and they had a trio together. So he and Andrew Hill and Malachi Favors, the great bassist from the ACM, they had a trio. They used to play at Robert Show Lounge. They used to play at the Kitty Cat, which is featured in the Raisin in the Sun, the Sidney Poitier film. And so you'd meet these people, or even better, one of my favorite stories is there was a drug dealer, Cookie, Cookie New Bird. And so, like, I would be playing with Vaughn in my early days with Vaughn in the 90s, and he would say, man, I knew Charlie Parker, man. We used to sit and drink, and we'd talk, and I asked Bird, how do you play all that stuff? And you know what he told me? He said, passing tones, like he was giving me some sort of, like, heavy knowledge. But you still met people who knew Charlie Parker, who knew the players, right, at the time. And you had honestly, you had way more Southside joints, I think, and I think that's really the big issue, right? So my standard early 90s hang was Thursday nights at Beijing Man's, which is at 71st East of King. You had the Apartment Lounge on Tuesdays. You also had the Starlight Lounge, which was 2 blocks east of there, on Tuesdays and Thursdays with Paula Greer. You had the Other Place on Monday and Tuesday nights, which had vocalist Lenny Lynn, and Eric Alexander was living here at the time, so he was playing in that band. Eric Alexander, the tenor player in New York. And had Alan Batts on organ, so one of the cats, and Curtis Prince on drums, one of the cats, right? So you would really meet like cats who had been there and been doing it. And there was a community. That was the thing. It was like more than just the musicians. It was the audiences. It was an audience who felt invested in the music, right? So I feel like a lot of that is what's lacking, right? I think the jam sessions is a great thing today, but they're mostly run by young players, except for Ernest Dawkins is the only one I can think of, unless there's others that you can think of, John.
Sirota.
Oh, Sirota, of course, yeah. Sirota on Wednesdays, yeah, I forgot. Yeah, so Sirota, but it's not like you have Von's jam here. And it was more than jam sessions. So when I met Von, it was actually his pianist, John Logan, who took to me first. He really liked me, and he was actually my first mentor. He would invite me to his house, and he would teach me stuff on the piano by ear. He didn't even want to talk about it. He just play this. When you're playing this tune, try this, try this, try this. And I learned a lot of what I learned about accompanying was from listening to him, and then I just worked it out.
And then you thanked him by taking his gig.
Taking his kid.
His gig.
His gig. Well, he died. I didn't take his gig. Yeah. Von gave.
It was a joke.
Yeah,
it was
okay.
a joke.
Yeah.
So anyway, but John would say, "Come to my gig here, and you can sit in." And then Von would do that. Come to my gig here, and I'll ask you to come up. And there were times where Von would just ask me to come up and play, and it wasn't a jam session. So. Just
there was sit in on that tune, or a couple
tune
of
or
tunes.
two,
Right.
or one of the things Von really liked to have me do when I was in my early 20s was sit in with vocalists, so that they would be calling tunes I wouldn't know, and I'd have to learn them on the spot, right? So that helped me get my ears together really fast. So I mean, there was all these like training techniques that were meant to be done in the fire, which I think. I'm very happy to see that there's jam sessions, like there's one on Monday nights at Easy Does It, but run by Kabir, Delaware, drummer. All young cats, they're really, really great cats. But there isn't an elder presence like there was with Von, which I think is something that could be helpful outside of the ones we mentioned, Ernest and Ted.
John, did you want to add something, or?
Not really.
Oh, okay. I thought
just that, when you went to see Von, it was really a master class. Because I keep saying it, and I keep telling all the students coming up now, it's like, the last person is, I want to say Mr. Brown, that we have like a actual representation of it, but Von had a different tone. Von and Fred both, it was like, man, that tone, the way it filled the room was just like incredible. Like,
there were sometimes Von played low notes. I felt it in my feet.
And it just vibrated. And then to feel that vibration, y'all know, for those of you who've been there to the apartment lounge, you already know. I was just like, man, it'd be crazy. But to hear him, and I remember when I was growing up, it was like everybody's biggest thing was saying, you really need to learn how to play a ballad. And to hear Von play a ballad was, man, it's really hard to get that in person now. The way he did it, it was so intimate. And then one, I wasn't even supposed to be there. Let's say that, right? But to hear the way he would just take his time with it, and he literally would take his time. It's something that's just masterful. You can only get that by going in person.
Or from somebody of that stature and of that generation. So let me turn to something a little different. Chris, you were the manager at the Mill when Kurt Elling started appearing there every Wednesday night.
A little bit after that. One thing I want to touch on, just to wrap it up. But you guys are right. There are very few open jams where you have elder statesmen, and that was the thing that was really enticing for a lot of musicians. Was late night Friday night at Mill, because you had Schneids, Hash, Eric Schneider, Dennis Luxian, Steve Hashimoto, and what was the drummer? Rick Shanling. And they ran a tight ship, and you did not screw around. And so I think a lot of young musicians who are more graduated to other platforms today will take advantage, or really learned a lot from getting yelled at. And getting their ass handed to them on stage. Get off the stage, kid. You're being a ding-dong.
So, well, even though you came in after Kurt's series of Wednesday nights, we all know about it, I think, or you may have heard about it. But that's an example where there wasn't an elder statesman, really. It was a bunch of guys who had some experience and who had been mentored properly. I mean, Kurt certainly was mentored by Von Freeman and others, a few others of that generation, mainly Von. And so he put the band together that didn't have well-known established names at the time. The pianist Lawrence Hobgood had been around a little longer, and people knew him as a good composer and a good arranger and a great player. So that's a different kind of situation where you now have, this goes back to, without comparing what Kurt was doing to what Charlie Parker was doing, but it does go back to the Minton's model. A bunch of guys who don't have this overriding, overshadowing elder statesman force, but putting it together and learning on the spot, and through that, developing a solid band and a real style of his own. Do you see that happening now anywhere? What?
No, I was just about to say, it's a little bit different. I will say, because I live both here and in New York, it's a little bit different in both scenes. I would say that happens a lot more in New York, especially because, like, you know, people's houses were becoming like venues at one point. Even when I was out there, it was like, even though all that whole scene had left, it was like the McKibben Loft had been turned into like a venue at one point. But yeah, small. I just know, like, from my peers, like all of the different bands they use smalls as that too, and they've been using smalls. I think now it's starting to turn into a little bit something different, but back then when I was out there, smalls was that place for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, with these comparisons, you always have to keep in mind that New York is approximately 3.5 times the population of Chicago. Yep. And so there are that many more musicians, there's going to be many more clubs, and to the extent that you build up a certain a momentum of that kind of mass, that's always going to be different. But what is going on now specifically? Where would you go to hear what we're talking about this weekend or next week?
For me, probably between what's so nice about Fulton Street, the Brain, and Constellation is not that far from each other. So those would be the places I would go to see some things, especially all the different things that happen at the Brain. There's a bunch of different things happening at the Brain, especially with the jam session that Sorota's doing.
And the other thing that's good at the Brain is that he's doing a monthly residency.
Yeah.
So different musicians are there for a month doing different projects each, what was last night? I was there Thursday night, each Thursday night. This month it's Mei Sugimoto, the saxophonist. Yeah. And she's had a series. She had one band of her own. She did one with duo, and then I think trio or quartet. Last night it was a saxophone quartet that was an unusual quartet in that it features a bass saxophone played by John Arabagan, who says his wife wants him to get it out from under the piano, but there's no place else to keep it at home. It's a really big instrument. And so this was really intriguing, and this has happened, I think, pretty much every month for the last couple of years. And that strikes me as a sort of different response to the same thing we're talking about. A place where instead of just going in to do a concert or traveling to another city and doing your set, where you get to work out new things, to experiment, to develop.
Well, it was another spot.
What about you, Chris? What do you?
I don't know if there's a specific place that offers that. I think that it's more of scene oriented and more chemistry oriented. Mm-hmm. I think that there are different pools of musicians. You have the cruiserweights, like Jimmy Faraci and Stephen Parisi and Josh Akron and Kabir Dalawari. They all work together and spread out, and then you have, some of the mid-level guys like Marcus Carroll and Greg Artry, who all work together and stuff like that. So it's not so much a specific brick and mortar establishment as it is these pools that have gone around and play at different places that have created what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of us who are out here like trying to do our own thing, like my trio, the Regulators, we're the rhythm section for the Model Citizens Big Band, which is going on 30 years next month. And we were just playing once a month. We played once a month at the same club, the Gallery Cabaret, for 25 years. And we just kind of did our own thing. That was part of the incubator that helped us start. But then we started, we can do this and this, and we started developing our own music. But we had to find venues to play. So it's more like we were hopping around all over the place, but doing, still trying to do our thing,
Right.
that our vision, what we wanted to do.
Chris, you also brought us something a few moments ago about sitting home and watching a performance on video, and I don't know where you're ordering steaks from, but it's probably better to
We'll
go
meet
out.
after, I'll show you.
Probably better go out and get one. But they don't travel well. But but that also brings into play the idea of how much the audience participation matters. If you're sitting home, I mean, look, I've listened to a lot of stuff. I'm not crazy about watching a jazz performance on TV. It doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel right. The things that are problematic about a live performance, where there could be glitches or things that aren't really worked out, I don't mind if I'm in the club, because I'm part of the whole experience that's leading to that. You're watching it on TV, you kind of expect something finished. And that's not the purpose of that kind of thing. So anyway, I have trouble watching it on TV. I wonder how many other people feel the same way, that they would rather be hearing or seeing a live performance live rather than, say, getting a so-and-so live at the Vanguard and listening to it at home.
Well, I would hope there would be a lot of people. I don't know if there are anymore. I think that, I mean, we did live streaming during the pandemic just to stay alive. Yeah. And then it kept us afloat. And then...
And that was different. That was a lifeline.
We had to do it. But then when things opened up, we did a hybrid, in person and live stream. And we noticed the live stream, all it did was keep people home. And so I think the live streaming is done. And it's just time to get people out in butts and seats and supporting this art medium.
I think one of the things you pointed to there, Neil, you know better.
Yeah.
You know, there are, especially younger people who've never experienced it live, they've just only experienced the screen. Okay. So, I mean, people being more separated, alienated from each other is kind of where things are going right now. So I think these sorts of things, we need to, push harder on them to have them, because people will hopefully realize that, oh man, when it's live, it's something.
Yeah.
And that's a two-way street. That's the club and the musicians themselves. And I often tell musicians, it is not 1964 Lower East Side of Manhattan anymore, man. You got to pound the pavement and have your EPK ready to go and be keen on social media, because you really have to hit people over the head to get them to come out and see you.
I mean, there are exceptions. The Green Mill, where people just go no matter who's
You
playing.
could have a guy pulling lint out of his belly button for 5 hours at the Green Mill. People, yeah, I'll go see that. I mean, it's a classic place. It's a great bar, and there's so much history.
Andy's has the same impact, especially now that they've started treating musicians with a little more respect, actually asking for quiet before the set,
That's great.
letting these audiences who are there for some bachelorette party understand that don't shout now, wait till the break. So I think that's important. I think that's really important. You talk about, I mean, I'm not immune to this. I'll be 75 in the fall. Sometimes the idea of getting up and going out when there's another Netflix series that I haven't finished is very, very tempting. And so, 1 minute? Okay, we have 1 minute. Yep. So, but when I do force myself out, I'm always so much happier that I did. It's almost like it's more trouble to get yourself to go than to actually be there.
Well, there's more competition I mean, back in the 90s, we went out every night. It's -2, who cares? Let's go.
Right.
It also didn't cost you $25 to park.
Right, yeah. So
costs
there's a
are
lot
really
of
bad.
things.
Also, I was
working
30
against
years younger, so that helped. I think we're about done then. Is that right, John? Do we have
Yep,
time
we're
to see if
about
there's
out of
any questions? Can we take a question or two? Does anybody have a question?
Not a question, but a comment.
Okay.
There's a lot of do it yourself.
Right.
Alaska guards.
Right.
Oh yeah, Elastigard's mom.
Yeah. No, we were.
And there's a code where musicians who just play it properly. If you're looking for a sound, be creative. These are like, and you mentioned Kevin King earlier. He has his own jam sessions, but it's mentioned
it's probably-
on Instagram, and you have to ask where it's happening.
Yeah. Well.
We're not the academic.
Right. All right. Well, thank you very much for being here. Thanks to Mike Allemana, Dr. Mike Allemana. Thanks to. Are you a doctor yet? Dr. Chris Anderson, and thanks to John Foster.